Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. We'd like to call the meeting to order, and first thing we'd like to always do is have a pledge of allegiance to the United States of America. Would everyone please stand? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. First thing on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to, we're supposed to have a work session on shooting of firearms being prohibited in Clearback subdivision, and I would just like to go ahead and put that on the consent agenda, item 9, because basically at the end of the work session, it was going to be up to the board to place this on the 18th agenda for advertisement in September. So I'd like to put it on there that we advertise the public hearing in September. Because I think in looking at the background information, 9 out of 15 of the lots are represented, and they're in favor of putting some type of ban on there. And I think in the past, we've usually gone along with the majority of the people living in the POA, so I think this would just be, and then people would also have the opportunity during the public hearing to comment yes or no. So it just seems like to me, and actually there is an ulterior motive, and that is trying to get rid of one item on the work session that we have to discuss. So I think it's going to move forward anyway. I know there's some people who would like to speak to it tonight or today, and I think by putting it on the agenda now, they would be able to address that during the regular or the first public presentation. So that's my request, to put this on there to advertise on the second meeting in September for the public hearing.
Anyone else have a problem with that? Okay, good. Emily, could you make that happen for us, please?
And Mr. Chairman, I received an email from Finance Director Mr. John Lunch today. He has a slightly amended motion for item L, the CARES Act appropriation, but we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Okay.
And I believe Mr. Hampson in the email this morning as well, he would like to add an extra item to the closed session, but it's still under section A1, personnel, and the amended motion is at the place of the dais.
Okay, thank you. Then that would be item number 9, I believe. And the two items on the closed session. Yes. Any other things that we need to add to the agenda or take away from the agenda? Could I get a motion, please? Yes. Okay. Mr. Ham?
Yeah.
Do we have a reading for the referendum that we want to have?
Well, if you want to add that to the
Yes, we do.
agenda.
We would like to add that to the agenda.
To the consent agenda, correct?
Yeah, to the consent agenda, please.
Okay. So it would be a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the amendments discussed this morning and an additional item J10 on the consent agenda, which would be authorization to enable the county attorney to file a petition in the circuit court seeking a referendum on whether or not the Confederate memorial on the courthouse lawn should be removed.
And that would be item number J, oh, A10, excuse me. Oh, J10, excuse me. J10. Anything else? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
excuse me, as amended. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You second.
Was that unanimous? Because it needs to be unanimous consent to amend the agenda.
It
I
was
think you need to do a roll call.
unanimous. We just want to make sure that we did it correctly.
Sure.
Is it okay if I go ahead and do it again? That way we'll make sure that we get it.
I think a roll call vote would be appropriate
Okay,
since
that'll
it's
be
coming
fine.
down.
I also need a second.
She needs a second. I made the motion.
I'll second it, Ms.
Okay.
Shirachi.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Shirachi, could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Ms. Colors?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Carries. Thank you. Next thing on our agenda is the presentation about the broadband proposal for Warren County. Virginia Broadband LCC, are they represented today?
I do not see Mr. Manuel in the audience right now. I can check with them. I can only assume that maybe weather held them up, but I will find out very quickly.
Okay, thank you. Brandon, would you like us to hold that and give them the opportunity to call for labor?
If that is possible, yes, please.
If they show up,
Yes, sir.
we'll see if we can, if we've got the time.
Okay, thank you.
Next on our agenda is the public comment period, which lasts about 45 minutes. That is for the public to give any input on any items which are on the agenda, but not the subject of a public hearing. Mrs. Shirachi, has anyone signed up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. James Harper?
My name is James Harper, 3658 Rockland Road, Front Royal. Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, before I begin, I'd like to welcome Mr. Daly and wish him well as he takes over the county administrator's job on an interim basis. I'd also like to recognize Mr. Rick Novak for organizing the prom under the stars for students at Warren County High School and Skyline High School. It's a great idea, and I understand everyone had a great time. The reason I'm here today is to ask the Board of Supervisors to amend Section 177-3 of the Warren County Code. This is in reference to recreational shooting in Clearback subdivision. Several weeks ago on a Saturday, we all heard automatic gunfire for over 5.5 hours. This was non-stop gunfire. Many nights and weekends we hear the gunfire, and on occasion it sounds like a cannon going off. I'm told by some with more experience in guns that this is a target, and when a bullet hits it, it explodes. It sounds like a cannon. They also shoot into a metal target, and when you hear the bang, 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 or bing, 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 no telling where the shrapnel goes. Bullets do not stop at the property line. How would you like to have a gun range in your backyard? Many of us have complained to the Sheriff's Department, and all they say is there's nothing they can do until the code is amended. Many years ago, this was farmland. Now it's a neighborhood. Is it fair for two houses to disrupt the neighborhood? I have signatures from former Supervisor Ben Weddle, and let me recognize some of my neighbors here. I have Gene Eisner, Bob and Joan Baylor, Bruce Benzie. They're all in support of everything I'm going to say today. I have signatures from former Supervisor Ben Weddle, former town councilman Kermit Nichols and his wife Joan, Richard Runyon, the owner of Shenandoah Valley Golf Club. And when I first moved out there, Richard told me that, or someone at the club told me that they were having a wedding. And they went across the street and asked them to stop shooting while the wedding was going on because it's an outdoor wedding. And they said no, and they kept shooting. That's what we're dealing with. Maurice and Donna Lang, Judith Getty, Ruth Benzie, Malcolm and Carol Barr, and Malcolm would like to have been here today, but Malcolm's wife, Carol, is going through chemotherapy, and he was scared to come today because he was scared to get a cold and couldn't show up. But he said, he wrote something on the podcast of the Royal Examiner, and he said that should mark his feelings. Clay and Cindy Nettles, Larry and Margie Dillard, Willem and Juliana Dixkusen, I'm sorry if I mispronounced their last name, Joan and Bob Ayler, Christine Banks and her mother are brand new neighbors, and they wonder what they've gotten into. Linwood Marson, who owns the property behind the two houses where they shoot. Directly behind the two houses, they have a gun range. Connie Richard Swanson, Susan Bowen, John Krautheimer, James Krautheimer, Peggy Herndon Hayden, Rich Strunk, Janet Harshman, and Cliff and Lynn Lewis. I only went to neighbors in the Clearback subdivision and across the street on Rockland Road that live close by the gun range. We asked for the same county amendment as our neighbors on Bowling View subdivision. In closing, I'd just like you to think about your home. Would you like a gun range at your back door? Thank you for listening.
Mrs. Shirachi, is anyone else signed up?
Gary Kushner?
I'm Gary Kushner, 1106 Fetching Road. Good morning. In prior discussions of the CARES dispersion, there have been statements about a plan to use 10% of it, or well, a little over 200,000 of the money for utility bills. And I took a look at the documentation on the CARES Act, and it has 4 pillars of what the money is trying to address. It was to assist the workers and families, as pillar 1, to preserve jobs, pillar 2, to assist state and local governments, and to assist small businesses. The assistance for the workers and families was addressed by a $1,200, up to $1,200 payment for individuals and families, and a $500 extra amount for child and family. It also included $600 of additional weekly compensation for unemployment insurance. That's a pretty significant amount of money going to individuals and families to address the impact of COVID. To preserve jobs, they had the Triple P program, and that was so businesses could have money to continue paying workers, even though there wasn't work to be done, to ensure that they'd be available to come back when the COVID challenges were met. And we've heard recently how many of those employees are not going back because the $600 of extra unemployment insurance allowed them to have more income than what they had when they were actually working. And the state and local government's money was for unbudgeted costs, and then there was the category of assisting small businesses. But this category did not get a whole lot of support in the CARES money. It had a payroll tax payment deferment of half of their money they could extend to the following tax year. And it provided some money for interest on mortgage and rent and utilities of businesses. And it gave them a 50% credit on the tax for sick and family leave wages. But it didn't address the lost income or inventory losses that the businesses experienced. And the whole issue about the CARES money was to safeguard our economy, which was so significantly impacted by the virus. Now, the over $200,000 that's been discussed to go towards utility bills I don't really understand where that actually came from, because it's not referenced in any of the other formal documentation. And I do understand that the town had an idea of spending some of its money towards utility bills, late utility bills, I guess, overdue utility bills, but they have an electrical enterprise. So the town would benefit from taking some of that CARES money and paying off the overdue bills. The county doesn't have a similar type of utility issue. And I hope that the county is not starting to look to the town for guidance on how to govern, because I think that's probably maybe not the best example to follow. There's already a state Department of Social Services program that deals with assisting people with utility bills. And if this is such an important element to be addressed, maybe the state ought to provide it for all of its jurisdictions and not have us just deal with it in ours. The issue is where do we get the biggest bang for the buck? And if we spend over $200,000 to support utility bills, then that's money that's not going to be going to business support. And they are the fabric of our community. They are our neighbors. They have businesses that provide employment for people in the county. And they provide services to all of the residents of the county who patronize their businesses. So we'll get a much greater return on the investment of providing that $200,000 more towards business issues than providing it to utility bills. So I would just ask you to reconsider the allocation you have for the utilities and the CARES dispersion and put it towards businesses. Thank you.
Mrs. Shiraki, is anyone else signed up?
Jean Eisner?
I just want to say that I agree completely with everything James Harper had to say about our gunfire. It's been a thorn in my side for years now, and I want to thank him for all the work he's done as far as getting this in front of you all. Thank you.
Did you get her name
Jean Eisner.
and her address?
Oh, I'm sorry. 70 Clearback Road, Fort Wayne, Virginia.
Mrs. Shiraki, anyone else signed up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Richard Hoover.
Could we get a full name and an address as well, please?
Of course. Richard Hoover, 419 Liberty Hall Road, Front Royal, 22630. As you know, at issue is one of the veterans' monuments that stands on our county courthouse lawn. Dedicated July 4th, 1911, it has the names of some 600 Warren County veterans written upon it. The 5,000 to 6,000 people who gathered there that day, quote, commemorated the courage and patriotism of the men from Warren County who served honorably in the Confederate Army. To those who fought and lived, it read, and to those who fought and died, to those who gave much and to those who gave all. Many of those 600 names are followed by the letter K, which meant that they were killed. As such, these 600 names cut right through the heart of that community, as in fact it does today. They represented not only veterans, but mothers, fathers, wives, children, from whom they would be parted, often forever. As to why they fought, they belonged to Virginia, as others in our land belong to, say, Massachusetts or to Ohio. And they would go with Virginia wherever and whenever, for in those days,
one's primary allegiance was to the sovereign state, not to a United States of America. There was no such thing as a pledge of allegiance, and state militias far outweighed the federal army both in numbers and in prestige. It was state forces, for example, which largely fought and won the Mexican War. Robert E. Lee, no secessionist, resigned his Army commission only after Virginia had passed her ordinance of secession, not before. And the young John Singleton Mosby was confused, not knowing whether his Virginia would go with the North or join the Confederacy. He decided, as did his friends, to, quote, go with the flow, to go with Virginia, whether she went north or south. That's pretty much what happened here in Warren County, with the large majority of those 600 veterans who, whether drafted or enlisted, went with Virginia. For that was the sovereign state culture which serves as the background to our Confederate Veterans Monument. To look at it and proclaim, as someone recently did, that, quote, it makes me sick to my stomach, is to betray a disinterest in the past, an ignorance of culture, of literature, to reduce the telling of history to politics, if not to race. This slovenly cancellation effort impoverishes us and our children intellectually, and if permitted to thrive, will only disunite our community for years to come. And yet those calling for cancellation wrap themselves in the mantle of unity. Instead, it would be unity were there no conflict between the preservation of Confederate monuments, museums, and libraries, and the establishment of monuments, libraries, and museums to slavery in Warren County. I guarantee that patriotic Civil War enthusiasts, whether of the Union or the Confederate orientation, would welcome taking educational and commemorative steps with fellow Americans to ensure that the whole story of Warren County's role in the Civil War could be told. So instead of tearing down the culture of the so-called, quote, other, unquote, might a common effort to understand the past, if not one another, not be a grand bargain right here in Warren County? As a board member of the Warren Heritage Society, I know that Lower Virginia Hale archivists are working hard to gather stories of local African American history and to tell those stories. Let us imagine where this could lead. The dismantling of the historic courthouse monument would be a gigantic, if not irrecoverable, step in the opposite direction. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
This is Shiraki. Has anyone else signed up?
Robert Naylor.
Mr. Ayler, your full name and address, please.
I'm Robert Ayler III, 102 Clearback Road, Front Royal, Virginia. I, along with my wife Joan, are here on the gun issue in our subdivision. I'll be brief, and I just simply ask that you put yourselves in our shoes when you go into discussion. The pop, 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 popping is loud, it's annoying, and it's disrespectful. You don't know what time of day it's going to occur, so you're always in anticipation. Some of us have pets, and it's very annoying to them as well. I appreciate your attention, and thank you.
Mrs. Shiraki, has anyone else signed up?
Suzanne Siler.
Suzanne, your full name and address, please.
Suzanne W. Sally, 295 West Main Street, Front Royal, Virginia. Good morning. I am Suzanne Wood Salick, a member of the Warren Rifles Chapter 934, United Daughters of the Confederacy. And my family has been a resident of this area since, I think, 1754, before we were Warren County. We have been in existence, the chapter has been in existence since September 4th, 1905. One of our first projects was a memorial to the Confederate veterans. It took over 5 years to raise the money. Warren County was so economically devastated by the war between the states that not until the 1890s could we replace the bridges on the Shenandoah that had been burned by both armies starting with 1862. The counties had to build the bridges then, with no assistance from the state. In 1890, we had to use the pilings of the original bridges. And if you look down the river, you can see, as you cross the first bridge, you can see the little islands of rock. And that's the first pilings. And remember, they lasted until 1890. The 1890s bridges had to use them. And I have a correction. They lasted until 1940, when the new bridges then were put in place. So, we finally completed the memorial, and the old soldiers did their best to recreate the rosters of soldiers, and these names are on the monument. Here is a program, in case you all don't have one, for the county.
Thank you.
It was a memorial to the soldiers. It was not to glorify anything. It was their heartfelt tribute to their sons. There were a few mothers still living. To their cousins, brothers, and uncles. And that has stood since 1911. And we ask that you carefully consider anything about removing that structure.
Mrs. Shiraki, has anyone else signed up?
Bruce Colton.
Morning, Mr. Colton. Your full name and address, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Richard Bruce Colton. I live at 558 Rolling Mountain Road, Bentonville, Virginia. That's actually in Browntown. No longer have a post office there, so they use Bentonville. 73 years old. I'm here to talk about the monument, of course. Registered voter in Warren County. Pay my taxes. I do my best to be a good, upstanding citizen. I want to recount a few things, and one of my earliest memories is back when I lived with my parents. I'm talking 5, 6 years old. Lived on Church Street, and both of my parents worked. At the time, they had enlisted the services of a woman named Hazel Keys to help take care of me during the day, and she would get myself and 2 other friends that were still our local citizens. And instead of sitting at the house, as people do today, and watch TV or play games, she would take us for walks throughout Warren County, or Front Royal. Church Street, as you know, bordered on by Prospect and then runs down to Main Street. So we would, whatever route she wanted, she was the adult who would take us for walks. Anyway, we'd walk down Church Street, possibly turn right or left on Main, go up. If we turn left, of course. In those days, this was early 1950s, there was Murphy's Theater on the left side. Continue on up, eventually we come to the courthouse. There, depending upon what she wanted to do, we would go right or left. But always there in front of the courthouse, we would stop, and I was amazed by the monument to the soldiers. And she would explain and go on about that. It was wonderful to get an education at that age, to get me interested in history and Warren County and why things were as they were and what was what. But anyway, she would recount stories. I would say she was in her 60s at that time, probably born 1890, somewhere around there. But she would tell us about our town, our history, our citizens, our heritage, and it was just wonderful. So I would ask her about that monument, and what she would tell me, and I remember some of that to this day, that it was a monument to the soldiers who had come from Warren County that had fought in the war between the states. Never once did she mention, or was I ever told by anybody else in Warren County, that it was a monument to slavery or to hatred. That was not the purpose of it. One thing that she told me, and I still remember this every time I write a letter or write the word Virginia, I remember her distinctly telling me that when you grow up, I couldn't write at the time, I was 5 or 6 years old. She said, when you learn to write, always write out Virginia, the full word, don't abbreviate. That's showing disrespect. That's the way the mindset was, and it continues. And I think about that, I'm not joking. Every time I write the word Virginia, I write it out full. Anyway, to repeat myself on this, I have never walked past that monument. As I drove past it this morning, I thought of slavery or hatred. Anyway, more by myself, I attended the local schools in Front Royal and graduated from Warren County High School in 1965. Like all 18-year-old males, I had registered with the Selective Service System, and I was drafted shortly thereafter in 1966. Just like the men whose names are on that wall that Mr. Hoover referred to, the 600 of them plus, and I don't know how many of them were drafted, but I would say it was a large number of them. There was no choice in 1966 or in 1861 to 65 but to enlist. Yes, you could be a draft dodger. You could go to Canada. You could do other things to escape the draft. I chose not to do that. I understand from reading what I've been educated that if you resisted the draft or you were a deserter during the war between the states, you'd be shot. Treatment was not as harsh in 1966, but still was not good. As for myself, I spent 6 years with the United States Army, 2 active, 4 inactive. I spent a year in Vietnam. All of 1968, I was in Vietnam with the 25th Infantry Division, also known as Tropic Lightning. I'm sure there are other veterans here today. I'm not sure of you gentlemen's credentials, but I'm sure there are other veterans here that know and feel as I do. The monument on the courthouse lawn honors the veterans of Warren County and is on the same lawn, I want to point out, as the other monuments, memorials to World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and I'm sure in time to come there will be others added there for wars that have, conflicts that have continued since then. Are they the next to be removed? That's what, we're starting something here now that it's not going to end with what's done with that monument. It's going to continue on. The counterculture that's attacking all of our history in this country, that's what will happen. Start with this and it'll be a domino effect. To back that up, I belong to the VFW, I belong to the American Legion, anything military that I can belong to. Yesterday in the mail I got the current issue of the VFW magazine, August 2020, page 6, article, VFW condemns vandalism on World War II memorial. And with the recent protests, marching, rioting, the World War II memorial was desecrated. It's right here. If I would like to read it, I'll be glad to stay and you can read it. I don't know about you people. On my father's side, he had 2 brothers. All of my father and both brothers served in the United States Navy in World War II. On my mother's side, which was from Warren County, she had 2 brothers. Both of them served in the United States Army in World War II. One of my uncles, Joseph Williams, which died recently, or a year ago, joined at 15 years of age, had a very illustrious career through World War II and Korea. He was given a battlefield commission by General Patton at the Battle of El Guitar. Silver Star went on and was a hero in my opinion. Anyway, I take the suggestion of removing the monument as a direct slap in the face to all veterans of all wars that have fought the United States of America has fought in. In closing, I'd like to tell you one thing, the personal interest. As I said, I've lived in Warren County, probably will die here. I don't plan on leaving. But I've known many people in Warren County as I have lived here. One of Stuart Rudisill used to be a member of the Board of Supervisors. His father, Raymond Rudisill, lived in Warren County, up in Browntown, had the Glen Manor Farm. And one day I was with him and another illustrious citizen of Warren County, Smith Baldwin. I'm sure you fellows know him or knew of him. And we were taking care of some cattle, slaughtering some cattle for Raymond, and I was helping. Anyway, we had a lull. I forget exactly what happened, but we had to stop for a little while. So there's nothing to do but talk. And Smith, being quite the talker as he was, brought up his career and all that. We got talking about. So my grandfather, I told them, fought Pancho Villa on the Mexican border in 1915, 16, whatever it was. Smith Baldwin responded with immediately about how his grandfather had fought with Robert E. Lee. And lastly, Raymond Rudisill, Father Stuart Rudisill, told the story of how he had attended the ceremony on July the 4th, 1911 with his grandfather for the unveiling of the monument as it stands today. And we sat there and thought for a little while and said that he had told the best story, and he was proud, and we were both proud of him. So that concludes what I have to say. I would ask that you please take all of this into consideration from a veteran standpoint and not remove the monument. Thank you, one and all.
No one else has signed up, Mr. Chairman, but I did want to note, following up on Mr. Harper's comments, that Mr. Malcolm Barr did send me an email in support of the Clearback subdivision petition.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm not sure if I signed up for the wrong paper, but I definitely signed up. Could you?
Yes, the chairman will be calling to see if anyone else would like to speak.
Thank you.
If no one else has signed up, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Ruth? And could you get your name and address, please?
Sure. Bruce Benzie, 22 Clearback Road, Front Royal. My sister-in-law, excuse me, Susan Bowen owns Gently Farm at the corner of Fairgrounds Road and Watkins. Her cattle go absolutely ballistic when they hear that weapons fire. It's just amazing, unbelievable. And she's had them in the road and everything because of that. I was informed by somebody yesterday, this is not official, I have not seen it yet, that a 6-year-old child was wounded under the same circumstances in Middletown over the weekend. Weapons fire. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I do apologize. Mr. David Silik did sign up to speak, and I forgot to call his name.
Mr. Chairman, I'll yield to Mr. Vaughn and Mr. Porter and go last.
Thank you. Again, no one else has signed up. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Your name and address, please. We'll get to you in just a second.
Name and address, please.
Gary Dwayne Vaughn, 241 Cloud Street, from Royal, Virginia. I'm here to speak about the monument. There was a fellow that was young, was just starting life and newlywed, lived in the ridge above Harmony Hollow, 1960. Just married. When the war broke out, he walked 7 miles into town and enlisted with the Warren Rifles. And I think it was on his 3rd engagement, small engagement, that he was captured. It's a prisoner of war camp. Now that's bad enough, but word came back that he was killed in action. And got back to his wife, and she mourned for 1.5 years and moved on, remarried. Well, lo and behold, when the war ends, he comes back. And he would just did the right thing, moved on, started a family, and I believe he was related to Mr. Fox. His name is Anthony Fox. He's got a little grave up on top of the mountain. If you don't know where it is, you'll never find it. It's up above Land's Run, just a flagstone, tombstone. So really the only way that anyone can remember him, or visually remember him, is on that plaque, the monument. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Maybe give your name and address.
My name is Samuel Porter. I'm from 216 Fletcher Street, good old Front Royal, Virginia. So originally, I tried to make sure I followed your all's rules, and I checked the agenda last night, and the statute wasn't on there, and I see that it's added. So I don't have everything that I wanted to say, and I'm definitely not ready to present a petition to you, but there's a lot of things that I just hacked through that I definitely would like to mention. First, I'm a U.S. veteran of the United States Navy, honorably discharged. I got hurt in my service. I'm a veteran that's not for the statute. Get that out there. I also just listened to supporters of removing the statute are ignorant. I'm a several degrees, all honors, summa cum laude. I'm far from ignorant. Okay, But this isn't about me, the individual. This is about the people, collectively. Black people, people of color. There is surely no time for humor or sarcasm at a moment like this. I'm sure you can hear the frustration in my voice. It's really hurtful to hear some of those things, like I'm out to tear a town up or something. But again, there's no time for humor or sarcasm. But how in the heck is it that I have to try to explain heritage and history to people who rely on heritage and history for their support of keeping it there? Maybe it's somewhat hard for some people who rely on history and heritage to understand such militant commitment to the bondage of others. But 4 million enslaved African Americans in the South represented the country's greatest financial asset. Answering your question, was slavery really important to the Civil War? Make sure to begin in South Carolina. That's the site of our present and past catastrophe. South Carolina was the first state to secede 2 months after the election of Abraham Lincoln. It was in the South that the Civil War began, when the Confederacy fired on Fort Sumter. The state's cashy belly was neither vague nor hard to comprehend, and I quote, "A geographical line has been drawn across the Union, and all the states north of that line have united in the election of a man to the high office of President of the United States, whose opinions and purposes are hostile to slavery. He is to be entrusted with the administration of the common government because he has declared that the government cannot endure permanently half slave, half free, and that the public mind must rest in the belief that slavery is in the course of ultimate extinction. This sexual combination for the submersion of the Constitution has been aided in some of the states by elevating to citizenship persons who by the supreme law of the land are incapable of becoming citizens, and their votes have been used to inaugurate a new policy hostile to the South and destructive to its beliefs and safety. Now, I'm not sure who all in here business, inclined or intelligent, but to know that over $3 billion was at stake, I'm sure that the South wasn't too happy about it, and that was based off of slavery. A couple other things I'd like to say. History is vast. It literally spreads millennia. It covers different people, places, things, events. In respect of your time, there's no way that I can give a full history lesson on what I know to negate some of the things that you just heard. But let's be clear. There are 2 petitions out in your county right now. There's one in support, and there's one in support. There's one to support its staying, and one to support its remove and relocation. I like to make that very clear. Remove and relocation does not equate to destruction. So if you hear anything like that, you heard it from the source. Relocation and removal does not equate to destruction. I'm very much against that. And it brings me to one point. And at first I really honestly didn't want to mention it, but I got to. I've heard from no black people or people of color today. There's no black people or people of color who have signed the petition to keep it there. Do minorities' voices matter to our county? I'm wondering, because what I've heard and how I've been treated on Facebook and how the people who have supported this removal of this statue, that is a symbol of oppression to people like me, it's crazy. I wish that some of you could see some of the things that the messages that my family have gotten. I'm coming from a diverse background. My mom and my grandmother, that side of my family is white. The other half is black. But I'm telling you, as a veteran, as an intelligent human being, as a young black man, that symbol stands for oppressive views to people like me. And there's no way that you can think that I'll ever receive justice walking into a courtroom when I have to be a little, worried about what the people inside of that place may represent, that given what they have in their front yard there. Another thing, then I'm finished. I know that everyone has things to do. I'm appreciative of your time. My idea is not to divide our town. it's to unify. And I'll make a couple of other things clear. You had another petition that was for support of removal. And that other petition that was supporting removal, I don't think the other side would have liked that at all. They wanted it gone, melted, broken down, whatever. Again, I'm telling you, to me, relocation and removal does not equal destruction. The symbol, it is a symbol of oppression though, and I think that our county can do much better. We don't have a good history as it concerns racism. I think it'd be very good for us to, it's a good token. It shows that not only our county, it shows our state, it shows the Shenandoah Valley, it shows our country that we're better than that. Of course it may be heritage and history, but make sure when you rely on that heritage and history, you get into the context of what that heritage and history really stands for. Because I assure you, it was definitely over slavery. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Could we get your name and address as well, please?
Stevie Hubbard, 1169 Elm Street, Front Royal, Virginia. I'm a little emotional today, so, and like Sam, we weren't aware that this was being put on the agenda. So I don't have my thoughts as organized and written out as I would like. And I'm actually feeling a little disheartened because some of you have my cell phone number. So if it was something that was going to be addressed, I would have liked to have had the opportunity to have 5 or 6, 7 people from our point of view to discuss how we feel of the statute, but we weren't afforded that opportunity. I've listened to what everyone has said. If you look at the petitions that were authored, they were 2 weeks prior to Front Royal Unite's authoring a petition. One was for the complete removal of the statue. They don't want it in our county. And then the other was for it to stay exactly where it is. And so in an effort to compromise and unite and to consider all feelings involved, we thought the best compromise would be to keep the statue intact, but move it to a more appropriate location. So those that do have family members can honor their loved ones at that monument, and it can be less offensive to those that are offended by the statue by its placement at our county courthouse. I've heard people discuss how families were figuratively ripped apart and hurt during that war. It was not figuratively for Black people and slaves. They were raped, they were beaten, they were ripped apart as families, to the point that Sam probably can't retrace his historical roots. I can't, my children can't. So we can't know what our great-great-great-granddaddy was feeling and doing at that time of that war, because we were completely disenfranchised. Now I understand, because I am a compassionate person and I am a Christian, and I understand that there were probably many people that didn't have a dog in that fight, that had no business even being in that war, because it didn't benefit them, that they were just going along with the status quo and doing what they needed to do to honor the place in which they lived. And I want to honor those people. I understand that pain. I understand that completely. I don't think that their memory is going to be wiped out by taking a statue and moving it across the street away from our courthouse. The last time I checked, statues didn't teach me history. The history that many of you have been taught isn't exactly accurate. And we know that there was a movement to revise this history in a way that made the Confederacy more palatable. We know that for a fact. And we understand that many in our county are benefactors of that exact history. And so we don't want to offend. But when I look at our group, I don't know many that care if it stays. I don't know many that care to ever see it again. But I know that we were able to go to them and say, consider these people and how they feel and what this statue means to them. And so in an effort to do that, they were able to consider those people and say, maybe we don't need to have, destruction of the monument. Maybe we can just move it. Maybe that way we can honor them too. But I haven't seen one person from the side that is saying to keep the statue in its rightful place, consider what that statue says to a person of color. And I urge any of you that are wanting it to stay to help me understand how that statue, how my children are supposed to look at that statue and say, oh, that doesn't say that I'm a second-class citizen. That doesn't say that the atrocities and the terrors that happen to me and my people don't matter. Explain to me how they're to surmise that. Because I've asked many on Facebook to do that, and I haven't had a single person step up and tell me how I'm supposed to explain that to my children. And so, I don't know if there'll be a vote on this today or what you all plan on doing, because as I said, I didn't even know this was happening today. But I will tell you there are 2 petitions going in town. There's 3 actually. One for its complete removal that was gaining traction, which prompted us to make our petition that is a compromise, we feel. And then there's one for the statue to stay right where it is. And I will tell you, they are neck and neck. I can look at it from 1 hour to the next. And one petition is winning, and if I factor the 2 that call for it to be moved, there is a majority of your people that want it to be moved. So I hope that you will take time to maybe give a more appropriate hearing to the discussion of these statues, where you can hear from all of your constituents and not the select few that knew that this was coming, and that we can work together to figure out how to fairly represent all of the people in our county and to be inclusive to all of the people in our county. Because I can tell you, there is a sect of your county that doesn't feel included, and they are hurting. And they're looking to you for leadership, and they're looking for you to care about how they feel. I thank you guys for your time, and I hope that we can work together on a peaceful solution for everyone concerned.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll get to you right away, sir.
Yes. I'll yield.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Sila, 165 Hickerson Hollow Road, Front Royal, Virginia. Mr. Chairman and members, first I want to thank Mr. Navy. Read that you're retiring today, and I want to thank you for your service, or retiring at the end of the year. I want to thank you for your service to our county. That you've changed our rescue in our county for the better. Thank you. Next, how did we get to this point, and why are we at this point? Before the last 3 or 4 months, by a show of your hands, I would ask that you tell me who had ever heard of the phrase cancel culture. You had. That's where we are today. Cancel culture refers to the popular practice of withdrawing support for or canceling public figures and companies after they have done or said something considered objectionable or offensive. But increasingly, it is meant to erase parts of our history. History as a people, as a nation, are now being rewritten or erased. And it doesn't end with just a monument to Lee or Jackson. They've now gone on to Jefferson and Washington, Christopher Columbus, and countless others, including a black regiment that fought for the Union. That monument has been defaced. There are now calls to change street names, school names, county names, all in the name of this cancel culture. Now, people who do not agree with things from the past just want to erase or cancel these events or periods because it makes them unhappy. What we are witnessing now is nothing new in the annals of history. Removal of statues is something that really started to increase with commonality at the turn of the 1900s. A group called the Bolsheviks made a great art of statue and art removal, of things that triggered them, or upset them, or caused them to feel uncomfortable, or what reminded other people of other times. We see it continuing here today. The Bolsheviks started with the immediate removal of statues, even eagles, and then it was churches. Then the brown shirts of the Nazi Party started to tear down monuments in Germany, then Austria, then Poland, then France, and the rest of Europe. Eventually, they too went around and started attacking churches. When the communists came to Eastern Europe after the Second World War, the removal of the past continued, and they too destroyed more churches. Last fall, when I was in Budapest, it was shocking to see all that had been destroyed by every communist regime that had taken power, and the removal of art and history and monuments to the Hungarian people spanning millennia. Skip forward to the early 2000s. We had a little lull in it. Except for the Chinese. I forgot the Chinese. Chinese did their communist Chinese, the Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping removed countless monuments, statues, Buddhas, and they eventually took out religion and churches there too, especially in Shanghai, where there was an established Christian church. Skipping forward to the 2000s, it was the Taliban. And this is the dramatic removal of history, if I may approach, Mr. Chairman. This is what happens when you decide you don't like monuments because you're offended by them. This is exactly what happens. This monument survived, or these Buddhas survived 1,700 years. But the Taliban were offended by them. Inanimate objects carved in stone. They didn't have names of local people attached to them. Skip forward to 2016. And a group called ISIS comes about. And they started in Mosul and destroyed statues from the beginning of time in the Fertile Crescent. And it didn't stop in Iraq. They went up into Syria and they started destroying actually peoples that offended them. The Yazidi, if you remember them, most of them are gone now. And then they got to a place called Palmyra. Palmyra had managed to survive since the Roman Empire. But the extremists of ISIS were offended by Roman and Greek ruins. So they removed them. You can see pictures of entire civilizations just removed because people were offended by a statue or a column, etc. That's where we are today, in Warren County. like the Bolsheviks, the Communists, Chinese, the Nazis, the Taliban before them, ISIS, attacking and destroying every church in its path. Ladies and gentlemen, the cancel culture we hear a lot about today is the modern American version of these extremist groups. At some point, we have to say no. We see it happening in Richmond. We see it happening in Washington, D.C., in Columbus, in Baltimore, in Portland, in Seattle, in San Francisco, and many other places across this fruited plain. These are hard, cold facts. As Sir Winston Churchill famously stated, united wishes and goodwill cannot overcome brute facts. Truth is incontrovertible. Panic may resent it, ignorance may deride it, malice may distort it, but there it is. And that's what we have. First, it was Lee and Jackson monuments. They want it removed. They have now moved on to Christopher Columbus, Jefferson, Washington, and many others. And now here in our town, a memorial to 600 dead men and boys. It's not a monument to slavery. It's not a monument to preservation of slavery. It's not a monument to the Confederate government. It's not a monument to the Confederate cause. It's a monument to 600 men who were drafted or served in the Army, who had their citizenship restored to them by an act of Congress, who were made American veterans by an act of Congress, who this monument is a tribute to and in memory of. It's not about anything else. Same monument, the same people calling for the removal of monuments in this cancel culture have now, in their country, moved on to cherubims, angels, and stained glass statues of Christ. It won't stop unless you say no. When it is very easy to get into emotion on certain things. And my family, while I don't look it, when my grandfather moved to this town, was a person of color. He was, I believe, the first or second Arabic family here after Mr. Shibley to move to this town. He got called names. The monument, his family didn't serve there in that war. Our family wasn't even here on the Silent side. Not even in the country. Still in Lebanon. But we know, and we know from our experience, our shared American experience, slavery was terrible. There was no possible good thing about it. And thank God it's a dead institution. The men who were honored, as I said, aged from 14 and 15. We know of one 17-year-old. They were farmers, merchants, and employees. All the names on that monument, of all of them, 5 families, we believe had slaves. Not 600. I dare say anybody today or in 1861 would be willing to give their life for Walter Mabe or Cheryl Cullors or Archie Fox or Dolores Oates or Tony Carter to keep their slave. I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't sacrifice my life and my family's safety for any of you all to own another person. It wouldn't happen. And to believe that these 600 men who were mostly drafted were willing to do that, it's beyond comprehension. Why throw your own family into that risk? They served because most of them were called or ordered to. In the North, it was very common for people who had been drafted who had money to pay someone else to go serve for them. That occasionally happened in the South. But the South was poor, so you had to go. In the North, by the end of the war, there were draft riots. The North was tired of fighting the war and of going off the war to die. And they rioted. In the South, matters were handled much more efficiently and typically with a bullet if you didn't report or if you left camp. Let me share with you the incredibly tragic story of September 23rd, 1864 in Front Royal. Henry Rhodes, who was described as a small and weak guy, chased after Mosby's men and before he caught up with them was captured by Union forces. This is the day that turned incredibly bad for him. After he was captured, he was drawn between two horses and drugged through town from 522, down through town, down Chester Street, down what is probably Royal Avenue, to the area of Wendy's restaurant where he was shot. And then his body was left on the ground for the horses to trample over. His mother did not recognize him at first as he was being drugged down the street between horses, probably because there wasn't much left of him. And she tried to save his life, at which point she had a Union soldier threaten to kill her and stab at her with his bayonet. Imagine that. His name's on that plaque. He was never in the army. However, he was later given a commission posthumously. And this was all done under the watchful eye of a damson-eating George Custer, who later got his due. Henry never...
Mr. Simon, I really apologize.
I will, Rhonda. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have heard people claim that this monument on the courthouse lawn means that people of color cannot receive equal justice before the law in the courthouse behind this monument. That's a red herring. That's probably the most absurd argument I've heard for its removal. For that to be true, that means that our prosecutor, John Bell, who many of you all know is a racist and all of his staff are racist, that the judges that sit here, Judge Ritchie, Albertson, Hupp, Sharp, Athey, Funk, and Half, they all have to be racist too. And they're not. They're all good and honorable men and women. So that's an absurd statement, to state that someone thinks they will not receive equal justice under the law and the equal protection of our laws in our courthouse. Our shared American experience is one of the expansion of freedom and liberty, not its retraction or eradication. I implore you, say no. And I will leave with you the words of a German Lutheran pastor, Martin Niemöller, who you may have heard of. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to speak? And could we get your name and address as well, please?
Good morning. My name is Gene Hilby. I live at 836 Shenandoah Shores Road. Been a resident of Warren County for the last 4 years. Prior to that, I was a resident from elementary school all the way through high school. I don't have anything prepared because I wasn't aware that this was happening this morning. But I felt obligated to come here to let you know how I feel. The issue is that is it appropriate to have a Confederate statue in front of the House of Justice? Because we all know what the Confederacy represented. And it wasn't on the right side of history. They represented terrible things as far as slavery, as far as doing what's right. I'm the youngest son of James W. Kilby. Now, my father worked tirelessly for justice in this county. And he was met with continued resistance. And that resistance came from many of the people that were descendants of the Confederacy. The statue not only continues the type of hatred and the oppression that my family has been met with over the years. When I was in elementary school, being the only African American there for a number of years, I was the N-word every day by just simple hatred. Not until I got to middle school and got fairly large and strong did that stop. And it still continued out in the street in this county. There's a dark side to this county, and what we're here to do is to ask that this dark side change. In removing the statue from the courthouse, which is supposed to represent justice, is needed to heal this country. We've been doing peaceful protests, but yet we're being threatened with violence. And that's what the Confederacy and the people who want to continue the Confederacy always does. You know, they want to threaten you. They want, back in the days, they lynched you. When my father was trying to get the schools integrated, they shot through our house. They killed our cows. They burned crosses in our yards. So how do you think that the Confederacy feels to me? The gentleman wants to compare the Civil War with all the other wars. It's two totally different issues. The Confederacy split from the United States, and they supported the vicious and savage slavery that occurred. I'm trying to get all of my thoughts together, and I don't want to hold you here forever, but we have to make changes. And now it's time. The issue came up about the statue many years ago, many years ago, but as usual, it was met with the threat of violence. I came to you today to make sure that you carefully consider the real issues. Sometimes people want to take away the real issues and add all other types of things in. And also, some of the names that was mentioned were some of the names that did terrible things to my family years ago. So I'm asking you, this Board of Supervisors, to truly examine all of the facts, examine the wishes of the people of this county that live here today, not just a few that want to carry on this dark side of history. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? And may we get your name and address as well, please?
I'm the Reverend Valerie Hayes.
Could we speak in front of the microphone?
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Valerie Hayes. I live at 78 Summit Manor Drive in Front Royal in the county. I'm director of Calvary Episcopal Church here in town. I'm here actually representing myself as a member, as a resident of the county, and I'm speaking as an Episcopal priest. I'm actually not here at this time speaking for my parish. I just learned moments ago that this was taking place. I had been told that the Ministerial Association had been invited to come to a later meeting and discussion on this topic. So I first want to say that I'm both distressed and disappointed to have found out moments ago that this discussion was happening now. There are members of the Ministerial Association who would have been here had they known. As an Episcopalian, part of my baptismal covenant calls us, and we promise, to seek and serve Christ in all persons, to love our neighbors as ourselves, to strive for justice and peace, and to respect the dignity of all persons. And so I come from that place both as a Christian, as someone who came to the Episcopal Church later in life, and to the Episcopal priesthood in my second half of life, and having moved to this community not even 2 years ago. When I came here, I learned rather quickly about the history of massive resistance, that my parish at that time offered its Sunday school classrooms as space to teach white students, that the rector at the time was deeply distressed by this, but allowed the lay body and the leadership to vote, and he allowed the vote to go forward to allow those classrooms to be used in that way. As those who know the history know, it was an incredibly difficult time. They had to send their daughters out of the county to continue their education. His name was Frederick Weber. His wife was on the school board at the time. Our parish has been more aware of that history because when we came, it was an anniversary of massive resistance. I quickly got tied in the Ministerial Association, coming to the table in other organizations. I grew up in Georgia, so even though not from Virginia, I also was a native wife. I've lived all over the world. In recent months, our country has been thrown again in a different way into the awareness of the history of racism in our country, and that deep history of systemic and institutional racism that at this time we can no longer deny. Some of the clergy were approached over a month ago about the interest in having the Confederate monument relocated or removed. I grew up in Stone Mountain, Georgia, which many of you may know holds the largest Confederate monument in the United States, if not the world. In the discussion about the monument that is here in our county, in our town, on the courthouse, I agree with two things. That one, it honors those people at the time who died, and that is an important part of our community's history, and to those families. I also recognize that its place on the lawn of our courthouse, a place where people expect to go to receive justice, regardless of the color of their skin, or their religion, or their sexual identity, that in that place, it is not appropriate. And so I agree with those who wish to relocate the monument to a place that still allows it to be part of this community's history and honors those families and those families' history. I lived in Harmony Hollow. I know Suzanne Silik. I'm aware of the Hickersons. I'm very aware of the history and the importance to those families. But I call on this community and the County Board of Supervisors to work with the Daughters of the American Confederacy and with the Warren Rifles to seek a way forward to relocate the monument that is collaborative and cooperative, that honors the history, but also honors the desires of many in this community, including the ancestors of those families, to remove the monument from the county courthouse grounds. I'm very aware that this community does not need another overt, drawn-out conflict. We do not need any more politically partisan conflict. What we need is a way forward that recognizes our common dignity, our shared history, recognizes the sacrifices made for families at the time involved in a war that they may or may not have wanted to fight in. That history is complicated. The history of massive resistance is complicated. Part of my faith calls for healing, calls for a common understanding that we have more in common than not. And so, again, I come from a place that seeks to respect the dignity of all people, to understand a deeply complicated history, and to know that this statue for many represents a lack of justice, a history of violence, a history of racism. We live in the most amazing part of the state, in a beautiful area. Between the park and the river, we have so much to offer. And I am aware, personally aware, that the monument hinders some people's desire to move and live in our community. It affects our economic strength and development in a negative way. It affects the long-term vitality of this county. I do recognize that this is complicated. Life is lived in the gray. It's lived in the mundane. So I ask all of you, as the Board of Commissioners, Board of Supervisors, to look at the long-term health and vitality and healing of our community. Those who not only have lived here and live here now, but those who want to draw here, to strengthen our life together. So again, I do support the relocation of the monument to a place that's appropriate and agreed upon by the members of the Daughters of the Confederacy, the members of the Warren Rifles, and the members of our community as a whole. Again, seeking to love and serve our neighbors, to respect the dignity of all persons, and to strive for justice.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Final call. The general public comment period is now closed. Thank you everyone for speaking. Next thing on our agenda is the report from the Department of Transportation of Virginia. Mr. Carter.
I was hoping you wouldn't recognize me with my mask.
Yeah, just need to grab my hat. Excuse me.
Oh, and actually, there was a bracelet found in the hallway by one of our staff members.
Is it a gold one?
It is.
Honey.
Sorry, Anna.
Thank you so much.
I can't talk with this thing on, so I think I'm far enough away.
Well, Mr. Carter, just 1 second. 1 second. Mrs. Seiler? Mrs. Seiler? I just wanted to let you know that every one of us has looked at that pamphlet that you gave us. and we really appreciate it. Did you want that back, or were you giving that to the county?
That's for the county records.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that we got it to the right place. Thank you very much. Mr. Carter, I'm sorry for the interruption, sir.
Not a problem. Well, it's been a while. Glad to see everybody here.
Can you move
I'm
the
sorry?
microphone?
Can you move
Can
the
you move the
microphone?
microphone back? Can you talk into the microphone?
I can talk louder, how about that? The following is our report for June, July, and August. Under our maintenance, as you know, we had a significant rain occurrence in June. That resulted in several weeks of repair. We did ditching and skin patching on Rocky Lane. Fortunately, the majority of the hard surfacing that we had just completed held up, but we had that type of rain. Fortunately, it doesn't come very often, but when it does, there's no way to build to completely protect everything. We did rebuild Rocky Hollow Lane and Hazard Ford Road, lined the ditches with riprap. We repaired the Thompson Hollow Spillway, and we did the slope slide on Stonewall Jackson Highway. We cleaned up storm debris on Howesville Road, Blue Mountain Road, Strasburg Road, and various other routes on the south end of the county. We've graded and added stone to various other roads damaged by the storm, and with our routine maintenance grading, we continue to do that. On our scheduled maintenance, we completed the secondary mowing and started the second round of primary mowing. We will be completing primary mowing this month and begin the second round of secondary mowing. We performed asphalt patching on Rockland Road, Browntown Road, Buck Mountain Road, Limetown Church Road, Rivermont, Milldale, Pencilstone subdivision. We're going to be continuing this month on Ferry Run Road, Harmony Hollow Road, Moore Road, and Harmony Orchards Road. I'm having trouble talking between the mask and without the mask, so my brain will catch up in a minute. We performed skin patching on various routes in the county. We'll be sweeping the bridges on 340 South. And we've also replaced 3 pipes on Mountain Road. We've opened some pipes on various other locations. We've done brush cutting on Ashby Station Road, Browntown Road, and Strasburg Road. We did those to address site distance issues. We've cleaned the paved ditch line on Rockland Road, and we applied dust control on various non-hard surface roads in the county. Now, obviously, we're not going to have to worry about dust for a day or two anyway. Now, I have on here some board discussion issues. I know that this year, the secondary 6-year plan has not materialized as it has in the past. And we still do not have a firm projection because of the COVID on what our revenues are going to be. We do know that we had funds enough to cover everything that was funded for 2021 in last year's plan. And for this year, that means that Downing Farm Road, Panhandle Road, Rocky Hollow, and Cawthorn Mill roads are fully funded. That means that that work is moving forward. And we have crews on a couple of those roads now. At Cawthorn Mill, we may not get complete this year. If not, the funds are still there, and we will complete that as soon as the weather warms next spring. But the other 3, we're pretty confident we're going to get done this year. The budget, the 6-year plan that was approved last year in May of 2019. Okay. It has other roads that are scheduled out throughout the 6-year plan at the board's direction during the last work session that we had in 2019. I would ask the board to give serious consideration to establishing a ranking system for their non-hard surface roads. And by this, we know that our revenues are going to be down because of the COVID. How much down, we don't know. But funds are going to be limited for a while until the economy starts to recover. So we encourage the board to spend the dollars where they can get the biggest bang for their buck. We have a couple other counties that have established a ranking system. And what that does is, one thing it does, it eliminates all the politics from it. Okay, if the board sets a ranking system that says, based on this criteria, this is where you fall in line to get your road paved, and they adopt that, then it's the criteria on the road. And I'll give you some examples. It doesn't mean you have to follow this, but amount of traffic on the road, amount of houses on the road, crash history on the road, whether or not school buses travel the road, in terms of maintenance issues on the road. You know, is it a high maintenance road where we spend a lot of money on maintenance, or is it a low maintenance road? Other counties have looked at those and assigned those numerical values. And then what they do is they add up those values and then they number them on, whoever has the highest value gets the first priority and on down the line. We would be happy to help the county set that up, provide as much of the data as we can, at least sit down and talk about what your options are. It's too lengthy to go into here, but in another session, or maybe a work session, we'd be happy to do that. But I would encourage the county to consider that, considering the funds that are, you know, where the funds are going to be in future years. The other issue that I had on for board discussion, I received a request from Mr. Stanley before he left. The county was interested in a railroad warning system for Watkins Crossing and Fairgrounds Road. I believe I sent Mr. Stanley that information. I believe you have it in your packets. If not,
No, I don't.
okay. All right, he was concerned, he wanted to know what the cost was. When we talked about this, it was a concept initially. And so we spent last week, and I will send these to you. Yeah, I thought that he had given them to you, but I will send it to you. Our traffic people and our planning people put this together. But simply, well, it's not simple, but what it does is there's warning systems that can be displayed on Route 522 and 340 that tell people when the tracks are blocked. There's some drawbacks to this. They're typically designed for when railroad crossings are very close to the main road. Okay. This one is 2 miles off the main road. So there's going to be what we term a lot of false readings. And one of the other drawbacks is that when a train's going by, right now the system activates. So even though the train isn't stopping on the track, it's activated the system out on 340. So people will try to detour. The other thing is the length of these trains, if we can't separate, we don't know this yet, if we cannot separate Fairgrounds Crossing and Rockland Crossing, both of them are going to activate at the same time, given what we term false reading. These are all details that we would have to work out. But he asked us for an estimate. And the estimate right now to implement a system like that is $340,000.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
When that system activates, does it activate on both sides of the road, or are we talking about just on 345?
It would just activate. This cost puts a signal at the light on both sides, on north and south at Fairgrounds Road, north and south at Rockland Road, and one on Reliance Road. Okay, at the light, yeah. Five locations.
5 locations.
And it would be, it's what it is a message board up there that says, and we haven't determined exactly what it is, but railroad crossing block, something of that nature. But as I said, there's a lot of minutia and in the weed stuff that hasn't been worked out. One of the main things is that we have to work and get permission with the railroad, because we have to tie into their boxes at the tracks. And the other thing is we would have to have our own central office approved, because this is sort of a non-standard thing.
Now, that non-standard thing, is that part of this $340,000? And I know that that's a ballpark number.
Yeah, right now, that's all the cost that we can come up with is $340. But actually, it's, actually it's $333.
I was going to say, I may be able to help you out a little bit. The email did go out to Walt and Dolores on the 31st, and it did outline that along with the additional cost of the Ashby Station Road if we decided to add that as well.
Yeah, we did not add Ashby Station Road to that cost. And the reason being, the amount, we would try to address those roads that had the most amounts of traffic. Okay, but it's $149,000 a location, so if you want to add Ashby Station, you're talking $500,000.
Mr. Carter, I had inquired as to whether or not there was an app that citizens could sign up for on their phones that could alert them that the crossing was blocked. Are you aware of any technology that is available that they could sign up for?
I do not know that.
Okay. That could help eliminate the people coming out, because right now we're only solving the problem of people who are already out and want to go home. And so, obviously the tracks are blocked on both sides. So,
that's correct.
Yeah. So I have actually inquired into with my representative in the Virginia Assembly as to any assistance we could get. Because it's becoming a safety issue. I think you're fully aware of.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
It is. And obviously the ultimate answer is to get the bridge up, get the overfly bridge.
Right.
What's the timing on that? I know there were some delays or whatever.
Well, right now it's $5 million short.
Right.
Okay, so I don't know what the status is on acquiring that other $5 million.
Okay, because the grant is also run because of the terrain and
Yes, sir, it had to do with the drillings that they did and found out that there were caverns underneath of it. And so it added to the cost of the bridge. I do not know what status is for securing that additional $5 million.
Did you want to explain how easy it is to work with railroad? Because that's something too a lot of people don't understand. I think when the railroad started in the 1850s or whatever in this country, they were basically given carte blanche on anything they wanted to do. And I didn't realize, I guess I got on this board or whatever, and they started blocking it. I always thought the state owned the road and just gave it right away to the railroad. But that's not the case whatsoever. The railroad magnanimously gives you the right of way to cross their tracks.
The railroad owns, fee simple, the right of way that their tracks are on. And we have no authority or control over it.
And this has been a problem. It's not just become a safety issue. It's been an issue for years and years and years, especially in Shenandoah shores, one way in, especially with Shenandoah River Estates, where I live. They blocked it before. And you're right, as far as if you get a lengthy train, that can cause a 5-minute delay for EMS. I know some years back, and I actually witnessed it, I was going the wrong side of the tracks, or some people may think I'm always on the wrong side of the tracks. But anyway, so I figured I'd go down to the local store, and lo and behold, the train engine stopped right there. So I waited, and here comes a guy out, bopping down out the door with a bag and a soda in his hand. So I reported that to Mr. Stanley. He contacted the railroad, and they said, oh, well, we had a mechanical issue. I said, okay. A couple weeks later, around Easter, I came back from visiting in Winchester or whatever, and there it was again. And good, bad, or indifferent, these little things here take pictures. So they kind of, I mean, that just seems to me somewhat the arrogance. You know, pack a lunch before you get on the train. You know, it's just ridiculous. So I know, and I appreciate the efforts of some of our board members to work with them, and hopefully they can get something done, but it's just going to be very difficult. But anyway, good luck to you all. Thanks.
I'd like to just make a comment. I've taken the rip wrap on Hatcher's Ford. They did an excellent job on that. The way it was going, it's almost a one-way road. But by adding that rip wrap, you can actually get over, and it makes it easier for bypassing traffic.
They just about completely rebuilt that after the flooding issue.
Yeah, and it's a very good job now. But one more note, if you will, on Rivermont Drive, down close to the bottom, there's a huge bump in the road that would almost knock the front end out of your vehicle if you hit it just right. So I just want to make note of that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Carter, one more question about the railroad. Back to that. It was my understanding that the railroad, after we decided to do the bridge over the railroad track, that they wanted a third rail or a third track. Is that true?
It's my understanding that they are planning for, I don't know that it's the railroad as much as it is the Port Authority needing additional stacking space.
So that was a consideration with the additional $5 million, is that we had to,
yes,
then the expanse of the bridge had to be widened as to accommodate a third, or lengthen, you're right, a third, right.
Again, that's just part of it. A good bit had to do with.
So it's lots more complicated
yes,
than we initially thought.
Yes, as most projects are.
Yeah.
You have to appreciate the length of time when something is conceived to the time the funds actually become available. Sometimes it's years. And when that occurs, there are a lot of things that happen in that gap of space that impact what your estimate was.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a couple of things if I could. I want to thank you. The Hazard Ford Road, it's never looked that good. I've been married into the family and been using that now for, married 44, a couple of years dating, about getting close to 50 years in. Even the people that have lived there all their lives say that road has never been in that good a shape. It's unfortunate that it got washed out so bad, but your guys did an amazing job with very little left to do it with, that's for certain. As well as all the other roads. That rain event put a lot of work on your guys in a lot of different areas all at one time, and they rose to the occasion wonderfully. And also the road work that they did on Browntown Road and Buck Mountain Road. I understand the grader guy did most of that asphalt work, and he's got it looking like somebody with a regular road roller and stuff. He did a wonderful job there. He's to be commended on his grader work.
Thank you.
Couple of questions, and I know with that weather event and everything, the COVID, things have gotten behind, but just a couple of things that residents had asked me and we had talked about in the past. the road reflectors in the middle of the road from Rocky Lane to extend them on to the town limits. I knew you had said that you had that, the safety money, I think. I didn't know if that had kind of fallen in the cracks.
Reflectors, Rocky, okay, center line reflectors.
Yeah, for rain events. For us that are getting older eyes, and it's hard at night to, those things are wonderful. So I was reminded about that and said I would ask you. And also, a left-hand turn signal at the intersection of Browntown Road and 340. You had told me that they were going to be replacing those single lights and that would be an addition. And
Yeah, it's called a permissive yellow.
Right.
Okay, and they do have them on a schedule to do all over, but the funds are such they can only do so many at a time. So
right.
I will have to see where that's on the schedule. But I did talk to them about the reflectors on 340, okay, and it is in the schedule, but it might be as much as a year or two out before they get in there.
Okay, I appreciate it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one with those eyes, and I've had like 3 or 4 people ask me, so I'm glad to know I'm not the only one, although I feel sorry for everybody's got the same problem there. But again, thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time to put up with my annoyance. Everybody else might not have seen you for a few months, but you did ride along with me to look at the roads back a few weeks, and I really appreciate that. You answer whenever I send you an email or a call, and I greatly appreciate that.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and you're our customer, so we will do whatever we can. Sometimes we can't help you, but we'll help you where we can.
Well, and you're very straightforward with that, and I appreciate that. You don't mince words with it. You tell me what you can do and what you can't, and you do what you tell me, so I appreciate it.
And I had one more concern on Fairground Road. You were going to strike the road. I don't know if that's been accomplished. I haven't been over there in about
it may not have. We issued a new contract for our painting, and they are slow. They're just coming into the area. They had some employee COVID issues with the new contract. This has several of our contractors, but we will get it.
Okay, I appreciate that. That was the only thing I had in the back of my mind that needed to be talked about. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I know you're trying hard. Now, a general question.
Yes, sir.
Are you COVID concerns? I mean, are your subcontractors, are the guys that you're working with, are they getting back up to speed with the people that they need to do the work for you, or are you having major difficulties?
We're not having major difficulties. We've been very blessed in the Stanton district in that we have not had any positive COVID cases in VDOT. Some of our subcontractors have been slow to get as much labor as they needed because of the COVID. Okay. But right now we're getting fairly back onto schedule with our construction projects. Okay. There have been some reported, some of our contractors do things statewide. So they may have folks in other parts of the state that have had positive tests. There may be 1 or 2 in our area, we don't know. Okay, but right now, our mowing contractor, he was a little slow, but he's gotten back up on schedule. Our construction contractors are all on schedule right now. The painting contractor just coming in, as I said, he had some COVID issues. Okay. But our protocols and our safety things that we have put in place for VDOT folks, okay, so far have worked for us. Now, across the state, they've had those same things, and yet last week we had 7 positives in VDOT and other parts of the state. So it's still something we have to be very mindful of, and we remind our employees every day before they go out about the social distancing, wearing the mask, and keeping distance from the public.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, just 2, I think. I spoke to you briefly before the meeting about INOB, trying to get a sign to direct people to the Skyline
Yes,
drive, because people have a tendency to use their GPS, and there's some road up there called Skyline View, and they wind up turning in their entrance, and of course it's a gated community, then they have to back up and all these other things. And I know you had talked to Jerry, and you steered him towards some other people, I think Mr. Ingram, so they've been in contact. And in their conversation said something about, for them to put a sign up there just saying Skyline Drive 5 miles ahead so people won't turn in there prematurely. And we did have that problem before, I think with Grand View Estates, where people were using their GPS and turning into that subdivision instead of going to KOA. We also, I think, had that issue too. If you remember, I think Schoolhouse Road or whatever down there in Linden where it got divided. So GPS is a wonderful thing, except when it gets erroneous information in there, it's difficult to get it out. But he had mentioned something about having to come to the county and get insurance on the sign. Did you look into that?
I will. I had that right here.
Okay.
I wrote that down after we talked.
I figured you did, but I just on the record.
Yes, sir.
The other thing too is, unfortunately, and this is in Ms. Culler's district, there was another fatality on 340, I think, last week. And I'm not sure, I know we've seen some of the crosses periodically, and that is a very dangerous road, obviously. And I was talking to somebody, and they were just wondering, they said, I think when they put in, maybe it was Goonie Manor or Goonie Creek Bridge or whatever, they had the stoplight signals, which seemed to work as far as slowing some people down. Have they looked at it? I know they looked at it periodically as far as any type of calming effects for that road?
Well, they did a safety audit on that road about 6 to 7 years ago, and they have implemented, they widened shoulders, gave people more corrective action pavement beyond the line. I read the accident report on that fatality, and they wandered into the center and then overcorrected, as many very young drivers, I believe the fatality was an 18-year-old, do. And one of the things that is scheduled to get done, and here again it's being done, in stages far out, is to have rumble strips placed in the center of that. The problem is that the rumble strip alerts you that you're wandering over. It doesn't help you if you overcorrect.
I think the other problem there too, in this culture, as I said, or confirmed that, it's also people go too fast.
Well, obviously, speed has increased. One of the drawbacks of the lesser traffic is people tend to go faster. Okay? And we've had a lot of speed-related accidents. I don't know if you've been out on 81 lately, but probably the average speed is 77, 78 miles an hour now. Route 7 in Clark County, the average speed is 75 and a 55. It's people just can't, and secondary roads, we warn our work crews every day to have to be on the lookout, because the less traffic means that people come up on your work zone because you're driving faster. And I don't know how you can't afford to put a law enforcement on every road, okay? And so I don't know how you adjust for that. We do all we can do, but we can't fix people's carelessness or ignorance or ignoring what the safe speed limit is.
That's what somebody said too. I think it was one of the canoe companies. They're on 340. Somebody pulled in there, they pulled in the wrong place. They back out right in the middle of the road. So, somewhere along the line, you can't legislate common sense.
Yes, sir. Very good. Well said.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Mr. Carter. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the report from the Virginia Cooperative Extension Office. Corey Child. Is Corey, are you here? Great, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'll try not to take too much of your time since you've already been talked at length this morning. However, I am very pleased to have this opportunity to come before you and share what we've been doing the last couple of months. It's also very nice to actually see everybody at one time and be in the location where we're all in the same building, which is a good thing and a rarity for right now. We apologize because we normally have a report that's in your packet that details the activities of all the different employees that we have that staff Warren County. For those of you that may not remember, we have a variety of employees that come service the county that work in other jurisdictions as well. And we sort of work as a unified team covering different areas within our mission statement. And in doing so, we have different counties that are operating at different levels, and people have a mix of virtual programming and teleworking and all kinds of things. And that has, in this case, made it very difficult to get all the materials collected at the proper time to get it to you. And I apologize for that. But as you do also know, COVID-19 has changed the world around us immeasurably, but it has not changed the VCE mission to provide the services that we offer to the people of this county and the state, and to do whatever we can to help each one of you individually meet your mandates and questions and things as well. As I said a minute ago, we've moved quite a few of our programs and things online, made them virtual. We've learned to kind of adopt that with the hands-on activities that we normally have been known for the last 100 years. We're still getting back into the framework of having group meetings, inviting the public in, and trying to meet their needs without having to have them come to us directly and put themselves at risk or putting fear in their notions of how things need to progress. So we're still I guess growing in that regard, where we're trying to meet all the different needs that are out there in different ways, and it's putting a strain on everything because there's so many different ways now that we have to react and operate that we never did before. However, we've been putting quite a few things together that have done quite a good job. In the last couple of months, we've been focusing on primarily a couple of different areas. One of those has been financial management, both for businesses and for families and so forth. We have a couple of different programs that have been offered both in person as well as online, and people can come in and get whatever assistance that they need. We can help them with that. We try to help them become aware of all the opportunities that exist in the Coronavirus Food Protection Act. It impacts a wide variety of different businesses and agriculturally, and for the family it also binds together in several different areas, so we try to make sure that that information is out there, answer questions that people have them, and try to work with different families and different business operations, on how they can use those funds or those resources to stay afloat during this time. We've worked on a lot of food availability and small food manufacturing. That's coming back to the point where most of you probably realize by now and have the same issues that food has been availability and affordability have been an issue. A couple of months ago it seemed much more prevalent than it is now, but you can still go into almost any grocery store or a farmer's market or any place like that and not be able to locate what you're looking for because it's either sold out or can't get in stock or is not able to become available right now. So what we've been trying to do is improve the local availability of those products so that you and all the other constituents around will be able to have your needs met. We'll make sure that everybody has a chance to not go hungry during this situation. We continue to have tons of people that have requested information about how to join the local food movement or how to provide fruits and vegetables that can be grown right here in the county and surrounding area that can be made available very quickly. Some other things that we focused on have been been very successful with, actually. They both combined resources have been a Beef 2020 program, forage production systems for a variety of livestock, horses and so forth out there. Spotted lanternfly control. We've also, unfortunately, had to do some drought assistance work or drought damage assistance, and that also falls over into extra feeding and care of animals and livestock and things like that. Rain has been very spotty, if at all existent throughout the summer, and we have a fairly vast majority of producers that have had to change their normal operating methods and their business management practices to address that. So we've been providing services for that. As I said, the lawn and garden issues continue to come in at a very high rate, and part of that is because of the ever-changing weather patterns that we've had. We've had a really warm winter, kind of a cold period in the spring and a warm period in the spring, and then a cool summer early and a late summer that's been exceptionally hot and dry, so it's pretty much brought out every insect known to man, and everybody has different issues they're trying to deal with, so we're helping with that if we can. 4-H Camp in a Box is something that we've done this summer. As most people know, we haven't had or been able to have our residential 4-H camps or our summer activities that we normally provide for students, and we've done some things to help parents try to find an alternative for the kids to take part in while they're at home right now during this time, and try to give them the camping experience without ever leaving home. And it was a novel idea, and it seems to work pretty well. We've been providing a whole host of different programs, virtual experiences to deal with youth leadership, citizenship, and community service. We've also had an individual who's been doing quite a bit of work on the other end of the food category and food preservation, freezing, canning, all those kinds of things that aren't necessarily known to too many people in the public anymore. They're not very experienced at it. And there have been a lot of questions around those topics, and trying to provide for food safety and protect the public health has been very important to us in trying to get that done. I do want to remind you that we do have our agents serve 5 counties, and we are currently operating 5 different mechanisms, meaning that, how Shenandoah County is handling things is a little different than how Warren's doing it, which is a little different than Clark and Frederick and Page and so forth, based on the COVID-19 issues and how they're impacted locally. So we have to be able to be flexible and adaptable to work within those needs as well. One thing that might interest you, we are planning to try to work with the Warren County Fair again this year. In just a couple weeks, we're going to be providing in time for our 4-H livestock participants and exhibitors, the kids that have raised those animals and cared for them all summer and showed them at various shows. And we're going to be putting on a shortened version of our livestock show and sale to give those children an opportunity to wind up those projects and recoup some of the funding that they have dispersed toward that. We can certainly encourage you all to come out and support that. We are going to make a change this year. It's not going to be the show and sale for the market animals particularly. It's not going to be held at the Warren County Fairgrounds. It's going to be held at Virginia Livestock. And a large part of that is because it's easier for us to secure the facility and maintain the controls for cleanliness and protect our youth as they're completing the 4-H projects, and then the individual buyers when we come in, we can do that. And on top of that, that also gives some more flexibility to the fair in how they run their operations during the week. Still going to be at the same time, but we are going to move, at least for this year, out there to try to make the best situation we can for everybody and protect everybody's health.
What day is that?
It's going to be on the weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is the days it's going to cover, the 20th through the 23rd in that time frame. As I mentioned earlier, we're continuing answering lots and lots of questions. It's been surprising how many walk-in visitors we've had, be willing to come in and talk about their concerns and their issues. We're doing farm visits and site visits and very many things that we traditionally do. We all, practice social distancing and do those things to protect the public, but things are getting somewhat back to normal, and we're all pretty happy about that. I'm open to any questions you might have at this point. Questions from the board?
Not really a question. Just want to thank you for verifying that plant that I brought, sent you pictures. I appreciate that.
Sure. That's what we're here for. And anytime we can do anything to assist any of you or any of the people that you all represent, we'll be happy to do what we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corey. I'd like the public to bear with us and allow us to take about a 5-minute recess before we go into the board members and administrator and other reports, just for bio breaks, whatever is needed. 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you.